Well, I think for me, specifically as a vocalist, the most important thing is tone. And when I say tone, it's sort of like what your voice sounds like. And that is what essentially differentiates you from everybody else, you know. I can make an example. Sibongile Khumalo doesn't sound like Lyra. Lyra doesn't sound like, you know, and so forth and so forth. So I think for me, that has always been about establishing my tone and choosing repertoire that suits sort of the way that I sound. And how that works in performance as well. I think it's very important to, when you're creating live performances, always think about what it is that the audience is there for. One, they're there for music, but they're also there for entertainment. How are you entertaining? You know, I've been told that I'm quite funny, so I always sort of throw that into live performance as well, just so that when they come and see my show, people know what they're gonna expect, and people are keen to come see my show because of what they have seen before. Well, I think it definitely is something that happens over time. For me, I was lucky enough to have studied. I studied at UCT, and a lot of sort of the foundation of jazz music was established there when I was studying. So it was very much rules based, you know. You study the foundation of everything as you go to any school and study the foundation of something. There was space to sort of find yourself, but I think for them, the premise and the idea was to come to a school and learn as much about the rules of something before you learn to break them. And I think, you know, after studying and learning all sorts of things like phrasing and how to sing in tune and how to play a little bit of piano and all of those things, you graduate and then you think to yourself, okay, now what? And then you start finding a little bit more about yourself. You're listening to other singers, you're tapping into your background, you know, something that I think is very important, tapping into your background. Who am I? You know, what inspired me to even do music? Who do I listen to? That starts creeping its way into, you know, who you are establishing yourself as. I think also songwriting is a big way to sort of make your mark and to continue to be vulnerable and to continue to express yourself and your identity. So that's something that is definitely something that you sort of hone over the years, I would say. Well, for me, goodness, there's so many incredible artists that sort of come to mind and that I was thinking about. So one of my favorite artists of all time is Liz Wright. She, for me, the way that she sounds on a record, but also the fact that she's constantly been herself. She's always, you know, she comes from like a country background, and that seeps its way through into the music, even though her music is categorized as jazz music, you know. Mam Sibongile, of course, also comes from a classical background, but that has found its way into her music, even though it's categorized as jazz music, you know. Gretchen Palauto is also an example that I was thinking about earlier on, in the sense that a lot of her music and a lot of the music that she decides to cover is pop music. SWV Week. There's so many references and so much music that she's decided to sort of recreate that comes from a pop genre. And maybe that's something that she likes, and maybe that's something that she grew up listening to, and she thought to herself, okay, let me revisit sort of some of my influences. And so those are all three different artists in the jazz genre that sound completely different to one another, all using influences, all using subgenres, and fusing them with jazz music. So, yeah. We're living in a commercial age, right? We're living in an age where, as a musician, it's important to make art, but it's also important to make money. That's always the angst with an artist, in the sense that how do I, one, sell my music? How do I, to make my music entertaining? You know, a lot of artists will be like, oh, I don't want to be entertaining, I want to be thought-provoking. And I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. You can do all those things. For instance, I mean, you know, you guys are a radio station. In order for you to play the music on the radio, it has to be like a certain length, for instance, you know. It has to be sort of catchy. I think I appreciate KFM in the sense that they're always sort of pushing the envelope and challenging audiences to listen to music that they wouldn't necessarily find on other radio stations. So I can't really speak for you as a radio station, but I know with other radio stations, it really matters that something is quite catchy, you know, something is quite poppy, something is not jazzy. And I get that a lot. I get that a lot in terms of, you know, if you submit your music, they're like, oh, you know, they hear like a little 2-second piano solo and they're like, it's jazz. People won't understand. Like, we can't play this, we can't play this, we can't play this in the daytime. We can only play this from like 9 until 11. Do you know what I mean? So there's always that sort of angst. Even with artists who are like, even with performing artists in the jazz stream that are incredible, people will say, oh, I wish you were more Amanda Black, you know, and I love Amanda Black, but I'm just using an example. So there's always that push to want to change artists because they, you know, people say, oh, you're so amazing, but your music is a bit deep, like sifuna ukujiva, you know what I mean? So it's tough in that sense, and that's what I mean when I say, how do you stay true without necessarily dying poor? I don't know if you've ever experienced, if you've been to a live performance and someone sings a song, I don't know, in such a real way that you know, this always happens to me when I'm listening to ballads in particular. Songs about love always get me, I don't know why. I think I'm a romantic at heart, but someone sings the message of the song in such a real way that you find yourself crying. And that's always something that I'm wanting to achieve, especially when I'm singing something about love or something about pain, is being so completely vulnerable within that moment, within that song, that people get it. Like, people actually get it. Like, it cuts through. I don't have to say anything afterwards. I don't have to know. It just gets there. And I think that for me is important. And I've seen a lot of artists who are able to achieve that without even trying. I mean, Simphiwe Dana, for instance, is such an incredible live performer. Thandiswa Mazwai, Zoe Mudicha as well. She like every time. But it's because they're, you know, it's about nothing else in the moment but this song and this message and me wanting for you to understand what it is that I'm saying. And I think when I think of vulnerability in music, that's what I'm referring to. You can definitely pick up if like something is gimmicky, like something that's like manufactured. And I mean, there are definitely things that you do that you know people will react to. But I can definitely feel like a vibe, like a vibe would say, I know. You know, it's a bit but some people don't, and I think that's also another thing, is that like this is what I do for a living. So my experience of it and sort of what I expect when I go to see a live performance is very different from someone who just enjoys music sort of as a part-time thing. Yeah. I think definitely in studio is harder. Being vulnerable and to really convey a message in studios a lot harder, because you're only relying on the attentiveness of the listener and you're only relying on their listening ability. But when I'm in a live performance space, there's so many things that I can do to be able to sort of get that feeling, to be more vulnerable, you know, facial expression. So all your senses are engaged in a live performance. But if I'm just singing it in a studio, for instance, it takes a lot more from me, the singer, to be able to convey that message to you as the listener. Yeah. I've always found that the more and more I grow as a musician, I am a little bit more comfortable with what I sound like. You're always constantly comparing yourself, right? And there's always a thing of like, oh, I wish I could sing like Ubani. You know, I wish I could belt like Ubani. I wish I could. But more and more I've found, and the more and more lives and like singers that I've listened to, people just work with what they have. And it gets the message through. Like, if you listen to Gretchen, I'm going to use her as well. She doesn't have the biggest voice, not a huge vocal range, but she's been able to carve out an amazing career for herself, working with what she has. You know, she's an incredible arranger. She arranges herself, so she knows music, and she's been able to use that to her example. And it also goes back, I guess, to the point about talking about where you come from, your background. Essentially, working with what you have is using your truth. Your truth is enough. Your backstory is enough. The fact that you grew up wherever, you know, and not everyone's, you know, there's always a pressure to have a rags to riches in the music, you know, all these talent shows. There's always someone, oh, I came from nothing and music was my life and I was sleeping on the streets and now I've auditioned for this whatever, insert talent show, and now my life is made. You know, not everyone's life is like that. That's not everyone's background, but your story will resonate with more people than you think. And if you just tap into that, tap into your what you listened to as a kid, tap into how you grew up, tap into what inspires you, tap into, your ex that broke your heart. All those things. Use all your tools. Use your voice, as limited a range as it has. It will reach someone. It will resonate with someone. And I think that's pretty much the point with regards to using what you have. It's tricky, Natty. I think I'm a fan of collaboration. A friend of mine said that I'm like the Nate Dogg of jazz, because like I'm like on all the hooks, and so for me, I'm always willing and open to cross genre, cross generation. But I think jazz is a very sort of niche sound, especially in this country. People hear jazz and they're really closed off. They don't want to hear, even if someone is incredible, they're not keen to sort of collaborate with someone. And I think for a lot of people, because it's a niche sound, they're always sort of thinking, will people like it? Will it resonate? And so it's great that people on the level of Black Coffee are now sort of, he's always sort of pushed the boundaries. He did that Victor Ntoni Teta song. So he's a little bit more open-minded with regards to music, which we appreciate, because now it also opens doors for others of us to sort of collaborate with other DJs. But I don't know if I can give you an exact answer. I think cross-generational collaboration, it sort of is happening, but I think the misconception is that the older generation of jazz musicians are accessible to all of us, and that's not always the case. I'm lucky in the sense that I've worked with some of the older generation in jazz music, but can I just pick up the phone and be like, can we collaborate with, whoever? I can't think of a name, but it's not that easy. So that's also, I guess, a second point. But I wish it would be something that we would explore. I think it probably would be best if you asked those people. I don't know. I'm always surprised when I get a call from someone who's like, oh, listen, and I'm just like, but like, aren't you tired of me? Like, you know what I mean? Like, especially if you've been a part of so many projects, you think to yourself, surely there's, you can get someone else. But I think for me, when I get into studio and when I'm working with someone, especially someone who's written the music, with Sibongile, for instance, we got into studio and he sort of needed like another verse for a song, but he already had an idea of what he wanted to say in the song. And it was so important for me to be able to get that through in Is This Goodbye, which is the ballad that we did. Even Bonisile, I'd performed it before years ago when we were still in varsity. So I sort of knew the song and I knew who it was about. So I think for me, it's always about bringing the lyric to life. What is the lyric saying? When someone listens to it for the first time, what is the impression of what they hear, So it's always about the lyric. The lyric is first, like the words are first. What's the story here? And I hope that it's something that I've been able to do in a way that is true, because that's always my impression first. And I would think that that's probably the reason why I'm able to collaborate with as many artists as I am.